So, Alex press live.
Welcome one and welcome all. We are here on episode 131 of BerryFlow Upstream, and it is the first day of 2017. How you guys doing?
Tired.
James,
Blake
I could
got to
finally
bed early last night, let me tell you.
I could finally ask James how he's doing tonight. He's normally the one that asks us how we're doing. So, James, what did you do last night? Anything crazy?
Nothing crazy, man.
That's good.
This morning, went to like a top golf facility that just opened in Jacksonville, and it's a lot of fun. I think I like threw myself out though, which
Ah,
sounds like I'm taking the trash, but yeah, I threw my like, I don't know, it just feels weird. But it was a lot of fun. Surprisingly high tech. Like, is that Internet of Things when like the golf balls have sensors and stuff like that? I mean,
I think so.
Yeah.
BlackBerry needs to get on it for all the golf guys out there. This is the first day of 2017. Like, are you guys like so happy to be done with 2017, 16 rather? I mean, I'm so pleased that we're beyond last year.
Man, I don't know.
Man.
I
I
just,
just
it's
find
the
it
same.
all as like it's another day.
Yeah, it's just another day. Like, I don't know. And this whole thing like, oh, let's make a New Year's resolution and we're going to start things off, right? I think 95% of New Year's resolutions are ended on the 15th of January. And that's like a legitimate statistic. So, how about you just like try and do something like lose weight or whatever you want to do? I'm not saying anything about you, James or Chris. I'm just saying that's what a lot of people like to do.
I think if James or I lost any more
Yeah, that would
weight, we
actually
would
be pretty
disappear.
bad. Yeah, yeah.
I'd be as thin as the DTEK60. That was a
Ooh.
really bad joke. In 2016, I'm doing things. 2016, 2017, I'm doing things big. So these are my new. This is my new jug. This is Milo's, and it's not an advertisement or anything, but Milo's is freaking delicious. Let me tell you, Milo's is great. You know what else is great? BlackBerry, and I hope they take the cadence there and also go big in 2017. It seems like it's kind of like a dull year overall, right? I did a year in review, and I'm like, holy crap, this has been the most
Yeah.
boring year ever in terms of BlackBerry news. Blaze, I don't know if you look back, but is there anything like really, really impactful? I mean, like it's interesting because a lot of the interesting stuff that happened in 2016 for BlackBerry happened like in the last month or two, in the last quarter, so to speak. So it was just kind of weird. It was a pretty docile year for BlackBerry, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, we went through that on the last upstream as well, and I don't know. The only thing that I came out of was like the good acquisition and basically all the stuff with the
It happened
TCL.
in 2015, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Wow.
Exactly. Literally nothing
Yeah.
happened in 2016. The last acquisition they made was Encryption. That was like to start the year. They did CES Mobile World Congress type stuff, like, and then nothing. Like, it was pretty dry. It was really crazy. Like, nothing happened for BlackBerry. Like, literally the TCL, DTEK50, DTEK60, like all that stuff is 2016. It's outsourcing. It's going other places. It's BBM stuff. I mean, really, really interesting that it's been really just a focus here. They've been working, right? BlackBerry just work, work, work. And I mean, we're going to actually see the fruits of that labor literally next week, later this week, So I'm excited to see what CES 2017 has to bring, not only just for BlackBerry, but just like mobile in general. I think connectivity and all that stuff is going to be really, really important. Like IoT is going to have a real presence at CES this year, be it in the smart cars or the smart home, Google Home, Alexa type devices. I mean, it's going to be interesting. Sure. I still am not quite sold on like a home thing. And then when we put that in the scope of security, like I hear there's like the police are subpoenaing,
Yeah.
voice recording, Alexa and stuff like that. Like that's kind of weirds me out about the whole thing. And there's no oversight when you make that purchase, right? About what access there really truly is on mobile devices that are IoT internet connected.
No, and I think it keeps coming back to that thing where we need to give up our own, what we're doing day to day, and just privacy in general to get more functionality. And there's actually a page you can go to on Google. I think it's like /activity or something. And every single time you've said "Okay, Google," it actually plays it back for you. And then in addition to that, you can actually hear that like there's some things that happened before it, so it's actually listening before you said okay. So if you're in a conversation with someone and if you
Uh-oh.
just want to record like something, you can really quickly just say the words into your phone, and then later you can go and listen to like 10 seconds prior to that and after that, and it just shows our phones are always listening to us.
Google's
So that
always listening. Yeah.
exactly, and it's scary, and you need to have privacy with that and security with that. And talking about the subpoena a bit, I think that was over. There was like a murder case or something, right? And they were going to Alexa to be like, hey, it was obviously always listening, so maybe we can figure out a little bit more information about this. And it's very strange because in one side it's like, that's really screwed up where we don't have privacy, but in another bit it's like, really it's tough for you to do illegal things then. And will that make people be better people overall? Maybe less murders will happen because it's a lot more difficult to get away with it. But is it worth giving, away our freedom in a sense? And I think that's like the biggest kind of debate with it.
I'm not going to kill anyone
Amazon
this week.
Alexa.
I just purchased the Google Home.
Yeah. Hey, no, you have a lower chance of getting murdered now that you have a Google Home. So it's a security system in of itself.
That's ridiculous, but literally true. As we get more connected, the oversight from our devices into our activity and daily trends it's just gonna be crazy. I can't wait the day where it's like I call Amazon Alexa to the stand and, they put her down and we get to talk to her and see what's up. In the scope of BlackBerry though, I think the automotive is a good place to look for IoT because at home stuff is kind of lost, I think, on a large populace of people. It's like there are no people really out there these days, in the general population who are going to things like smart devices for, their informational needs. I think a lot of it is still good old-fashioned web browsing, right? In Googling and doing it the hard key way. I don't think voice is quite there yet for the very reasons we've just talked about. But I think when we look at cars and we look at what they are on the road, it seems like a great place to actually start innovating. Like that market, the car market, has been the way it has been since the Model T. Like not much has happened really, right? Since the old days, it's 4 wheels, an engine, and it goes, right? And we steer it around. I think there's a lot of smart that can be brought to the car. Blaze, is there anything in particular that you'd like to see in a vehicle that hasn't really been shown off before? I mean, every year BlackBerry's bringing these cars. I mean, last year they brought what was it, like a Maserati that all the mirrors were attached to cameras, so you had a wider depth of field and could control it. I mean, that stuff was really cool.
Yeah, and I mean, this year they supposedly have like 4 cars that they're bringing in total to it. One thing to talk about in regard to, automotive and stuff like that is that CES itself has increasingly become an automotive show. So it really is a prime opportunity for BlackBerry and QNX to go ahead and show off what it is that they do in the industry as well, because as that show, continues to grow into the automotive sector, it's a prime spot for them to be able to go ahead and make some sort of impact and let people know that there is a broader scope there. Like for years, QNX has, been underneath the dashboard, so to speak, and people don't necessarily know what it is. But now that all of these things are coming to light and they're, arguably the market is getting more competitive, BlackBerry has the opportunity to go ahead and show these things off. I guess one of the biggest things for me is not necessarily with autonomous driving or anything like that, but I want to see more heads-up display units and stuff on your windshield that are indicators of what's happening within your vehicle and just things that sort of revolve around safety as well. Like I want the car to know what's like further ahead of me to be able to go ahead and tell me like, hey, you're probably going too fast to make this turn or whatever, right? Things of that nature would be pretty interesting to see.
There is a child 5 meters ahead.
Exactly.
Did you guys?
That's exactly it.
Did you guys see the video where the Tesla predicts the accident before it happens? Essentially, it was behind a car, and the car in front of it, in front of that car, there's a car that slammed on the brakes. And what Tesla does with their newest update is it bounces off. Kind of like a sensor, it bounces off the ground in front of the car, so it can actually sense if the car in front of you is slowing down rapidly. So the car starts going off and beeping. I mean, I'll throw the video on really quick, but you can't hear the beeping or anything, but the car in front of it gets in the accident, and the car, the Tesla, it slams on the brakes essentially. It knew the accident was going to happen before even the people in the car knew it, and that's about like security and safety and what I'm interested in, and that's the bit that I'm excited about when we're talking about autonomous driving, preventing accidents. In fact, the car knew there was an accident before anyone did, even the car in front of it, Yeah. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy stuff. And that's essentially what I was referring to, not necessarily the Tesla video because I never saw it, but things like that can basically help the drivers. I get it. Autonomous driving is interesting, and it sort of takes the scope away, but we're still not there yet, right? So what are we going to do in the meantime that can actually be impactful on drivers and help the situations? Like, distracted driving is still a major problem. People picking up their phones, text messaging, stuff like that. Once we reach autonomous driving, that becomes less of a problem, but we're not there yet. So what are we doing in the meantime to be able to go ahead and protect people on the roads in that aspect, right?
Yeah.
Just put your phones down, people. That's all we can say, right?
Yeah.
Distracted driving is a serious thing, and I feel like that same microcosm of what Blaze is talking about in terms of distracted driving, I think it percolates into a lot of what we do with just electronics in period. I think there's distracted living, with cell phones and things like that. And I think when you really focus on what privacy is, it's getting away from that stuff. It's putting the technology down and living your life to a degree, And it's going to be nice when we have autonomous driving because you're going to be able to have like a meeting. You're going to be able to be very productive in transit because you're free to do and live a little bit more than you were instead of just kind of in the grind and in the whole string of things in terms of where you're going. You're going to actually be able to enjoy where you are. And I think there's so many cool things that can come of that. And you think of productivity and security for BlackBerry. There's a lot that BlackBerry could do to potentially offer in-car services. I mean, we saw them partner QNX with what was it, Obigo, for browser enhancements in the vehicle for HTML5 and a nicer platform to build into the vehicle and kind of sharing some of the teams there. I think that stuff is really positive because that opens up the gates for you to really access a lot of rich types of media and services and do it in a cross-platform way, where you can get one service on your phone and then one service in your car and they be kind of compatible with one another. Just some things to think about. 4 cars at CES is going to be interesting. They had 2 last year, I believe. They had the Jeep Wrangler and then the Mercedes, if memory serves. Or maybe I'm thinking 2 years back. It'd be interesting to see what the the third and fourth kind of cars are. I'd love them to bring like radar there too. Like, I know it doesn't quite fit, but you can imagine radar as something you could put on a car. Like, who's to say it has to be a trailer so much as maybe another type of shipping vehicle as well? They have those big vans that people use for shipping. Imagine putting something like that on there too. I wonder if we're going to see more IoT stuff like that come about. Definitely some interesting stuff. So what do you guys think for BlackBerry? Where do you think they should really be focusing? Because they are a software company, right? So where do you think the big advancements are going to come? Like BlackBerry UEM, this endpoint management system. What do you see that really connecting to? Do you think they're just going to go for more accounts? I mean, they're basically getting a solid 3,000 plus enterprise accounts a quarter. I mean, how do they really, really grow that business?
Yeah, I think they definitely need to basically get above 3,000. I mean, I think it was like 3,300, but that's just being pedantic. They need to basically go ahead and amp that stuff up. I mean, 3,300 accounts is great, and it shows that they have the capability to add people on. But in the grand scheme of things, 3,300 accounts isn't necessarily a lot either. Especially when you're targeting everything like Windows computers, iPhones, iPads, Android, like 3,300 accounts. But how many devices are on the end of those 3,300 accounts as well? I guess that's something that you probably have to factor in, because if one of those accounts has like 5,000 devices, then you're connecting to a lot of stuff at that point. But again, 3,300 accounts is just a relatively small number. In terms of the amount of businesses and operations that are out there that could essentially be utilizing the services,
Yeah.
Not even at a device level, just at a company level. Like, how many companies out there could essentially use these services if they were able to go ahead and expand upon it, right?
I mean, 3,300, and they're focusing on enterprise, right? And enterprise, I think, is 1,000 plus employees. So, there's small business, medium businesses. If they're focusing on enterprise, I'm sure they have some medium businesses out of this 3,300. It's probably not exclusively enterprise, but, these are probably big accounts. And we might be talking about they brought 300,000 users or, endpoints on board. But I guess, what's the value for each endpoint and then per each user and everything?
They need to get sales teams together doing the small business talk, because I feel like that's where it's really flexible now. especially because, as Blaze mentioned, they cover, all sorts of devices. I mean, that's something succinct and simple that it's one management console instead of multiple ones, or get it too crazy, or siloing the whole organization off into one space. But I guess that might be easy in a small business, right? To just go with one solution.
The thing is, there's a lot of competition in small business. There's so many tools accessible right now, and that's like where Google is focusing and these other companies. And something that I just saw recently was you used to need an Apple push certificate, so an APS or C, APC, whatever, and that made it kind of a pain. So pretty much if I had everyone on G Suite and I want to set up an iPhone on it as well, I would have to install an Apple push certificate, which is just one more step and a pain in the butt. Well, they just got rid of that recently. You no longer, to get basic functionality for able to like lock phone, wipe phone, a couple things like that, you no longer need the certificate, which means that you can get an iPhone running on G Suite mobile device management a lot easier. The easier things like this become, we're talking about $5 per user per month. That's really affordable, really cheap. And for now think of BlackBerry, for them to go to the small business area and try and get 10 users on board, that's like a small business. So we're talking about, they have to compete with someone else that can only charge, $50 a month, which is nothing. So it's like, does it even make sense for them to focus on that? Because they're going to probably have to come in and be at, $10, $20 per user per month to make any sense at all. It just doesn't make sense for them.
There's a potential kind of gateway, though. I mean, if they can then lock them into the platform and then sell up services like the Hub Plus suite and things like that, then there's smaller recurring revenue, but then at least you get more users on board. And then potentially as that business grows, they think, we're already on UEM and UEM can scale with us. As opposed to maybe capping out at a certain place and then needing to then migrate your system to something bigger, broader, and more advanced.
Well, and I think that's about usability too. Like if they can easily set up as, or what is it named now?
UEM.
Yeah, UEM. If that's easy for small business owners to just go set up, because a lot of small businesses, they don't have an IT person. So something like Google, they can go and set up super easily. But if there's any bit of complexity whatsoever, then, it just starts getting so expensive. And I understand, yes, it would be great to get into small, medium-sized businesses, but the time investment and the costs associated with it just might not make sense at all.
Yeah. And the sales teams, I mean, investing in those guys to actually do the groundwork is definitely expensive for the return being relatively, small.
And the support too. Don't forget about the support that comes with it.
They got 24/7, Blaze. What's the number, Blaze? What's the number?
1877 BlackBerry.
But it does make sense to focus on enterprise because it's also a higher barrier to entry to get in. And when someone in enterprise, like imagine a company, I think of these other kind of things. So like Salesforce pretty much owns the enterprise space. They don't care much about small and medium business because enterprise, all of their data is in it. People are used to using it. So imagine like a 3,000 person company. Everyone's used to the way that it functions and it works. There's a huge cost of change there. So if you just get them sold on enterprise and get your foot in the door, and they'll stick with it. They probably won't switch because there's a huge cost of switching. So I think it makes sense for them to focus, say, on enterprise. Why even go after small, maybe medium business? I mean, it depends, but ignore small business because they're just going to waste so much time, and it just doesn't seem like it makes sense for them for what their platform can do. It's just it's their platform is built for enterprise. Bringing enterprise to a small business doesn't even make sense a lot of the time.
Yeah, no one wants BBM enterprise. Someone does. Someone yell at me, all right? Tell me your company's using it, and I'll recant. I got this. At last podcast, you guys saw me showing off my DTEK60's UKarbon skin. I actually did a full review and a little video, and I'm really pleased with those skins. I mean, regardless of where you get your skins, I think it's a good investment for a DTEK60 device in particular. The one I got was extra grippy. I found that was really, really nice because I may have broken a DTEK60 or something like that along the way. So, yeah, the grip is definitely nice. I think something else is it feels. I've been trying to shoot this DTEK60 video for the past 2 weeks, and I got tons of footage, and I'm just kind of sitting it all down in Premiere and going through it all. And it is so hard to film a phone that is reflective on both sides. Mm-hmm. So throwing the skin on totally cuts out any reflection because there's no glass on the back, and you can get cleaner shots that way. I know a small thing for a lot of people out there, but here's my question to you guys, because if you look at 2016 and some of the top smartphones, almost all of them were all metal bodies. Do you think we're past the point of having like dual glass and that being premium? Do you think phones in the next, this year right now are going to be more focused on having that premium and elegant experience through glass on glass, or accomplishing that with a mixture? I mean, look at the Pixel, the OnePlus 3T. There's a lot of devices, even the this S7 Edge. There's a lot of metal going on to really bring that device together, and some of the other ones. Do you think premium is going to keep going toward the glass on glass, or head more toward this metal body frame?
You kind of needed to go back to glass, because when you're talking about, the future and that Mi 1 device or whatever it was, the full front, I mean, I know it was made out of ceramic or whatever, but ceramic's very brittle, so if you drop that thing, it's going to crack. Glass will too, but the future, like if you just look at all these shows and things and they're showing like the future, like check out Westworld, it's just a glass slab and you open up the glass and, it's just glass. And I feel like that kind of is what things will be, because glass can be a screen. You really can't make metal be a screen, or until you can. I don't know.
Alex is talking about Westworld. I'm talking about 2017, man. What are we looking at next year? all glass phones? Are we gonna be walking around like Tony Stark?
It like even some of the rumors of the next iPhone. Like I think the full front's gonna just be all glass. And
so you think 2017 the year where we ditch the bezels, basically?
Yeah, I think it's ditching the bezels, maybe doing some curved screens. I know curve is kind of, I don't even know like what the status of curve is. I like whatever, but yeah, I think this is the year that the Mi device, which had like no bezels on the front, and that was like the future. So I think it's going to be the years of these companies trying that.
I just don't want that. I mean, one of the things I really disliked about the Samsung S7 Edge, and I like that phone, by the way, is that it was just, there were navigation buttons on a tiny bezel all the way at the bottom of the phone, and this thing's 5.5 inches. So I don't know if it was just me having smaller hands than normal or whatnot, me having Trump hands, or just the device. But for me, bringing myself all the way down there, whereas like on a device like the DTEK60, there's a bezel to bring the navigation up a little bit from the bottom. I appreciate that in a phone. It makes it more comfortable to use, whereas like, I don't know. The way I pick up a DTEK60 versus the S7 Edge was totally different, and also fingerprint sensors in different places and stuff like that.
But I think aesthetics, man, you got to have aesthetics over functionality.
Probably the nicest looking phone of 26. Alex, you had one for a bit. I mean, it's just a nice looking piece of kit, and even the Note looked amazing. And I know people who's just holding on to it because they don't want to explode for one, and they don't want to. I'm not going to charge it ever, but. And also just because it's a gorgeous looking phone. I'm interested to see if Samsung just like, if I was Samsung, right, I would totally never do another Note, but bring all the Note features over to like the Galaxy, because all the phones are big anyway. Just make one really good phone and kind of never look back on the Note fiasco. Like just kind of move on from it and take the best of and do something better. But I'm interested to see how many devices TCL can bring to the table, because we've heard smartphones in plural quite a few times, and we've seen some leaks as well on Twitter that the Mercury device is going to potentially be coming to Verizon. Now, we have to take that with a little grain of salt, right, Blaze? Because a lot of times BlackBerry will build those files in, but not necessarily actually leverage the partnership with the carrier. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. I mean, just think about it. What did they announce for Sprint? And never actually released the BlackBerry Priv. I mean, those BlackBerry, all throughout BlackBerry 10 and even throughout the Priv file structure, basically, if you go looking for any of the stuff in there, you can find information from pretty much every carrier, even carriers that they never actually released the devices on. So it's kind of wait and see approach, because I mean, look at the situation with Verizon and the Priv and in previous BlackBerry devices as well too. They've kind of got a little bit of a cold shoulder previously, so don't count on one person's structure to be able to go ahead and say that.
John Chen saying on BNN, "Our friends at Verizon," which is like his version of saying our competition at Verizon, because they're both in the asset tracking space. It's like BlackBerry, as they head into this new brave new world, is going to be causing enemies more head to head with some of the other bigger players in the market too, which is good that they have a partner like TCL on board. In terms of models, do you think we're going to see like another 2 or 3 phones? I mean, if you think about 2016, we saw 2 devices from TCL. right? If in 2017 they also have two devices, a keyboard and an all touch, like I'd be totally happy with that. I really don't need more than that, to be totally honest. I mean, one at the beginning of the year, one at the end of the year, something similar to that, I think would be a fine kind of setup and strategy. But I don't want them to go too hard either. You got the licensing brands for BlackBerry, like, don't go crazy saturating the brand with just a bunch of devices that no one cares about, right? Like spend time on just a couple and get it right. I'm interested. Some of the specs we've seen or seen really like reconfirmed, so to speak, are really interesting. The fact that the screenshot that was posted doesn't have any of the actual home navigation buttons or anything like that, I found very interesting. So we're looking at a panel. The device is going to run Nougat, Android 7, coming in at 1620 by 1080p resolution. That's 420 DPI. And we're not seeing any home screen navigation buttons in that screenshot. So a lot of the other things preserved there from what it looks like. We still have the side battery edge and the pop-up widgets and things like that. But how do you guys feel about capacitive buttons on a BlackBerry running? And it just seems weird. Like I feel like Android Nougat and capacitive buttons are like totally against one another in terms of form. Do you guys think you could get into capacitive buttons? I mean, they were. I'll say when I had them on my S7 Edge, it was nice-ish because you'd put the phone sideways, and something I didn't like is that on a normal phone, a normal Android with no actual capacitive or home screen navigation buttons, those buttons disappear and they'll actually transition with the UI depending on how you have your device oriented. So it was nice to have like a dedicated place where I could go to hit back or hit multitasking even when the phone was in any position, which I thought was kind of nice. Something we may get here on the Mercury. But overall, Blaze, do you feel like that's something that we need, a capacitive multitasking button like that?
I mean, for me personally, it comes down to the form factor of the device itself. If the form factor, makes it feel as though the capacitive button should be there, then yeah, it makes sense to go ahead and put them there. But when it comes down to a device like the DTEK60, the DTEK60 doesn't really require them. It can function perfectly fine without any of the capacitive buttons or anything like that there. So,
that's funny. That's funny. Priv can function perfectly fine without the keyboard, right? But it's there.
Right, exactly. And it I don't know. It's one of those things where it comes down to the use case scenario and whether or not it actually fits the device. Mm-hmm. If you're just sticking the buttons there because you want to have buttons on the device, then no. But if the form factor calls for it, or if it feels as though that the form factor should have them there, then why not put them there, right? I don't think it's a step backward or a step forward in either direction. It just depends on the device itself and whether or not the usability of said device can be improved by actually having them there.
Definitely.
I mean, I think it lends itself to, like, now that you have like physical buttons, having capacitive buttons in addition to it doesn't seem that far off or like that big of a deal. When you have capacitive
especially
buttons,
with the classic too.
Yeah.
When you think about the tool belt and the classic and like what this device is a successor to for a lot of people, having like something tactical there, I think is probably good
at all. Like screen orientation doesn't change. Like nothing changes.
If they were somehow able to build a trackpad type into those capacitive buttons and give them like another level of functionality, I think that would be cool. But I think probably asking for too much.
Well, I mean, look at the Passport. Like, there's something really cool about the Passport. The fact that you click into a text field and then that, the row appears and it kind of changes things. Like, in a way, it's innovative. It's smart. It makes sense. But for the average person using it, they're probably going to be a bit confused it takes a bit to get used to it, especially changing in like the Alt key and to make characters pop up, or when you're typing characters are on that line and it changes. So it's like you don't know what's going to pop up. So yes, it's intuitive and it does work when it should. You now have to learn how the system thinks that it should work for you. And there's a little bit of confusion that comes with that.
Definitely. I'm looking forward to, and we're going to get this news by like next week. So next episode, we'll be able to really dig into whatever it is TCL actually touts. And I'm hoping we get to see a little bit more of the flavor of the partnership, and how all of that really is going to roll out. because I think we've been a little bit surprised with how TCL has kind of taken the reins of controlling the messaging here, and I think that's something positive to look forward to as well.
Yeah, I think honestly that's the biggest thing to actually come out of there, because the device is coming no matter what. But it really when the information comes out, it's going to have to come with at least a little bit more acknowledgement of what the agreement actually means in the long term, right? Because there's a lot of different structures and things that have been said thus far in terms of how the device is going to roll out. BlackBerry says one thing, TCL says one thing. The rumors all point to something else, and
Alcatel does something totally different.
Yeah, I mean, if we go by some of the rumors, then there's a chance that the Mercury could end up in Indonesia. Well, how the hell does that work? Because we already know that there's an Indonesian device being created as well. So is that Indonesian device just another variation of the Mercury? Is it actually just another device in itself, something entirely different from the Mercury? It's just a totally weird scenario, weird time at this point for any sort of device information. You can't even like rely on whatever BlackBerry says anymore, because when you take a look at the entire situation, they don't know either. I mean,
they're building a device. Oh,
yeah, they're gonna put our brand on it. Cool.
They get the review unit and they're like, oh man, I'm gonna get on YouTube and do a review of this right now. Definitely been a very interesting year.
I'm actually looking forward to is like finding out a little bit more of that information, because like I said, we know the device is coming at some point in time. It's just how is
will it come with the 821 or not? No.
Yeah,
not. 625. We had, and also at the end of January, at the end of this month, we're going to be celebrating 4 years of BlackBerry 10. We did a nice little summary of 2016 year in review on BerryFlow. You can check out some of the highlights. That's where we got radar. We talked about how BBM is better than Snapchat and infrared messaging. We compared S7, iPhone 7, and DTEK60, and a bunch more things in that post. So go check it out. Learn about the QNX Autonomous Vehicle Innovation Center as well, which we're probably going to be hearing more about in 2017.
Yep.
All right, Alex, let's wrap it up. Let's jump into this after show. Let's talk about the Mercury in a more candid way, right? Because there's a lot of ways they can mess this device up, and hopefully they don't, right?
Oh, absolutely. All right, guys. Thanks so much for spending your New Year's night with us. Enjoy your time off if you have off of work tomorrow. Whatever. Have some fun, and Happy New Year's, everyone. See you later.
Take care, guys.